Okay, good morning everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. GlaxoSmithKline, as you know, is a global company watching the Olympic opening ceremony. I think we have operations in almost, but not quite as many countries that marched in with their flags last week. But we are at heart a very British company. Only about 4% of our global turnover is here in the UK, but something like 40% of the £4 billion we spend each year on R&D is spent here in Britain, and 20% of our global manufacturing base and our activity is undertaken here. So the UK is a very important place for us, and we're delighted to support business in Great Britain and this forum. We're also, I should say, very proud to be the official supplier of laboratory services to the Olympics and the Paralympics, and that's ongoing. At one level, being part of a global management team of a private sector enterprise operating in healthcare right now feels quite challenging. There's no doubt, if you saw our results, and indeed some of our peers last week, that the economic pressures across the world, but particularly the austerity measures in Europe, are having an impact. We feel that on pricing to some degree, and also on volume, which is probably more worrying from a patient perspective. And obviously the funding issues are real and need serious thought, and us all working together. Having said that, we've actually never felt more optimistic about the prospects of GlaxoSmithKline over the next 5 and 10 years, and more importantly actually about the prospects of healthcare improvement on a global basis, both in the developed world, but also importantly in the developing world as well. And that's based on a number of things, but first and foremost, innovation. I've been in the industry about 20 years, and I'm sure many of you have been around for that period of time as well. And you know, at times it obviously has been quite frustrating in terms of the amount of money that's been spent on research and development and the somewhat sort of erratic output that has come in terms of innovation. But we are very confident that a lot of that activity has been worthwhile, even if the promise of decoding the human genome and a lot of the understanding of human biology has taken longer to come through. It is very clearly coming, and there are a number of clear trends and signals that indicate that we are on the cusp of a very exciting and very meaningful wave of innovation that could substantially improve human health and make a material difference to patients. If you look at oncology, much more targeted medicines in the last few years. In the last year, you know, a number of companies, not GSK, although we're coming soon, producing new medicines for things like metastatic melanoma, where there was really nothing until very recently. In vaccines, where we're clearly a major player. The improvements in adjuvant technology, which enables vaccines to be boosted, has allowed us and others to introduce new vaccines that could substantially reduce the incidence of cervical cancer, new vaccines that can substantially reduce the incidence of rotavirus, which is very material in terms of mortality and disease burden in the developing world for all the associated diarrhea and dehydration. And probably most excitingly of all, from our perspective, we're in the final stages of clinical trials for developing a malaria vaccine, which will be particularly used for children, pediatrics, in the malaria-ridden parts of the world, particularly Africa, and we hope to be able to bring that in conjunction with the Gates Foundation sometime in the next 2 to 3 years. And based on the efficacy that we've seen to date, we think we can save hundreds of thousands of lives in Africa every year through that vaccine. I was in Washington last week at the International AIDS Congress, 30,000 other people, the most diverse group of people you could ever come across. Whoopi Goldberg, Elton John, Bill Clinton, South African sex workers, everyone was there. And you know, AIDS is fascinating. In 20 years, there's been huge progress from a deadly disease to something that is really sustainable and manageable on a long-term basis. There's more to do, still 8 million people that don't get medicines that should. But for the first time at that meeting, there was a serious discussion about a functional cure for AIDS. It's some way off, it's speculative, but it was substantive, and we're part of that, and others are as well. So innovation is coming, it's going to be real. I think also the other exciting thing for us is we think it is sustainable. It is much commented on and reported that at GSK we've really completely restructured the way we do discovery research. We've broken it down into small units. We have about 40 of them, somewhere around 50 to 60 people each, very highly accountable. We fund them for 3 years. Some of those are in the US, in the Delaware Valley, in Boston, where there's a hub. We have our neuroscience unit, 400 PhDs just outside Shanghai in Pudong, looking at disease-modifying agents for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, that sort of thing. But we have a lot here in the UK. Our respiratory units, some of our autoimmune units, our biopharm units are in Stevenage, Cambridge, and around the UK. And the UK is very important to us. In those units, about 50% of what they spend their money on is internal, about 50% is external. So it's very important, firstly, to have the right people, but secondly, the right links with academia and so forth. So all our links of Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial. We do a lot of clean chemistry with Nottingham University. We have chemistry exchanges, student exchanges with Strathclyde. The university base of this country is absolutely essential to us. We also make no bones about the fact that the government and what the government is doing in creating momentum through the life sciences strategy is absolutely critical to us, and the patent box in particular. Putting a 10% tax rate on intellectual property created in this country is extremely important, and we will invest more in research and development in the UK as a result. And as the Minister said, we've committed to spend £500 million in Cumbria and Irvine and Montrose in Scotland, enhancing our manufacturing base. I do think, actually, there is an opportunity in the next decade for the South East, but the UK generally, to be the preeminent life sciences hub in the world. I mean, I think we have everything coming together, except possibly the sunshine that California has, to really make that happen. And I think, we should set ourselves the objective that if you are a bright, leading, world-class scientist, you want to come to the UK. And I really think that is possible. Of course, to make it all happen and to really capitalize on it requires partnership. The problems of world health are too great for one company, one part of the sector to deal with on its own. It takes private sector, it takes NGOs, it takes academia, it takes governments all coming together. So my second reason actually to be optimistic is I think for the first time we are seeing a much greater spirit of partnership from all parties in dealing with that, and this event is part of it. Certainly from speaking from the private sector, from the industry's point of view, I think there is a new generation of management, much more open. We are willing to do much more open innovation, share intellectual property, even be much more flexible around pricing. So it is an exciting time. There are challenges, but I do think there is a great opportunity to substantially improve human health care over the next 5-10 years. And more importantly, or associated with that, I think there is a fantastic opportunity for the UK and for the institutions, large, small, private sector, government sector, to be a fundamental part of leading that change and contributing to it. And I'm delighted that we are one of that, and delighted to be here. Thank you.